So growing up, honestly, family wasn't a terrible situation. Parents were divorced, but I didn't know anything different. Didn't go to church, but it was a loving family. Mom let me know I was loved. It wasn't until freshman year I made a decision to really let people dictate my worth. Let people tell me how valuable I was. And freshman year, I started drinking. The first time I did it, I actually overdosed. I had an entire bottle to myself, not knowing what I couldn't handle. Fast forward 2 years, and I watched my friends kind of dabble with marijuana and not get in trouble, no negative repercussions, so I decided, well, why not? Honestly, within 2 weeks, my mom met a new guy, got married really fast, and she let me live in that house by myself for 2 years. Led me to a lot of negative decisions. I had a lot of house parties. I didn't have any rules. I realized I could use people for what I wanted. I had the house. I kind of had a place where people wanted to be. And so honestly, girls and drugs and alcohol and friends kind of came and went. And then one day, a friend of mine whose dad had surgery, he just had a couple Vicodin in his bathroom, asked me if I wanted to try them. And so we took one, took two the next day, took a couple before school. And it wasn't long until it was 12 a day. That continued for a little while, and once that ran out, I wanted a different high. I wanted something more, something to make me feel better. Around this time, my family life kind of went to a mess. My mom moved in with her husband, and I honestly didn't see her. I'd rather be at home partying in an empty house where I didn't have rules, and my dad, never saw him. Didn't really see my dad growing up, workaholic, and I can remember thinking back, man, I wish he loved me. He only lives 5 miles away, but I wish he cared enough to make a phone call, to come see me. Really, I felt alone. Then one day, I realized I needed something better, something more, and I started using Oxycontin. It made me feel better than the rest of the world could. Shortly after that, I dropped out of college. I hit a real low. Anything that I could get my hands on, anything that was available, was something I would use. Even with the sex, the drugs, the partying, the people I surrounded myself with, I felt alone. And I remember one of the worst points where I looked back and a guy had morphine patches and gave it to me. And I remember just ODing. And I got put on a couch in my house where I lived alone. And for days, nobody came to see how I was. Nobody came to see if I was alive. I really thought at this point I could die and nobody would find me. Everything I valued, all the drugs, all the people, everything that I thought made me valuable, all the popularity, in that moment was gone. I was alone, preparing to die, by myself. I got better, I recovered, and shortly after that, a guy I went to high school with who was a Christian, who really I didn't hang out with, but for some reason, he gave me a call. I didn't even know he had my number, and he called me and just asked me what I was doing with my life, how I was doing, and I thought, why is this guy calling me? He was a churchy guy. He was a goody two-shoes. He would never want to hang out with somebody like me. And honestly, he asked me to hang out. He wanted me to come to his life group, check out his church, and for some reason, something inside of me wanted to be a part of what he was doing. I went to his life group, ended up meeting a lot of nice people. The people were accepting. Even though I showed up high, even though I showed up drunk, they made me feel valuable. They didn't judge me. They didn't make me feel less than them. They accepted me. And he asked me to come check out this thing called Vertical and CedarCreek. For some reason, I checked it out. I remember they played Linkin Park at my first weekend. And I thought this church is different. This church is actually kind of cool. I remember leaving. There was something different. There was something unique about this church. And a few weeks later, I shadowed him at Vertical. I remember the presentation. I remember the words. Are you want to be who you want to be when you face Jesus? Because we all have to do it sometime. I just broke down. I remember sitting there in the pews in the chapel, weeping. This strange guy just crying by himself. That's the day I gave my life to Christ. That's the day I remember my life turned around. That night I went home, I knew something was different. I actually called the girl that I was seeing and told her I didn't want to be doing what we were doing anymore. And so we cut ties, and I realized sex wasn't the answer, drugs weren't the answer. There was something about this Jesus thing that was different. Something about that made me feel valuable, that made me know I was loved, that I mattered. I started serving in Fusion. I started serving in Vertical. I wanted to make an impact in people's lives where that we're at a point where I made bad choices. I wanted to give them a positive influence in their lives. I talked to Ben Snatter, who was the student ministries director at the time, and he pushed me through the internship. And during the internship, I got married. I met an awesome Christian woman. Years later, I got hired on staff, and I'm actually working in student ministries at our White House campus, and I couldn't be happier. I couldn't imagine being where I was 5-10 years ago and being here. I can't imagine God used someone like me, through all my weakness, through all my hurt, to change the world for him.